Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week and excited today. We have Winston Meikle. He is a veteran nurse, educator, and healthcare entrepreneur with more than 40 years of clinical and academic experience. He is the founder of Loving Care Partners, a healthcare advocacy company rooted in a love-centered nursing philosophy, and COO of Mobile Lab Technics or Techs, a mobile phlebotomy and diagnostic service across the New York Metro and Northern New Jersey region. Winston is the author of the forthcoming The Power of Love, a new model for self-healing and wellness, along with its doctoral level companion, The Power of Love, a nursing theory. His work weaves together quantum physics, consciousness studies, spirituality, and Caribbean ethnobotanical traditions into a unified framework for a whole person wellness. So, welcome, Winston. Super excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Kim. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you.
So, can you tell me a little bit about your journey, how you got into nursing, and what inspired you to write your book, all things Winston?
Oh, okay. Let me see where we start. I guess we'll start at the beginning. In my last year of high school, I was interested in pursuing a career in medicine, and I asked a guidance counselor, what courses does the school offer that would help prepare me for, my endeavor into medicine. And they offered me the opportunity to take the first half of an LPN course that was offered through a cooperative a relationship that the school had with a vocational school in our area. In New York, it's a organization called BOCES, Board of Cooperative Educational Services, which was an adult vocational school that offered classes to high school students. So I would go to school and then get on another bus that would take me to the vocational school, spend half the day there learning nursing for nursing licensed practical nursing classes, and then go back to school to finish the day. And I did that successfully, and 7 months after graduating, I completed the course, and I was a LPN at 18 years old. But while I was in school to become an LPN, I was working as a home health aide. So my career in healthcare started at 16 years old,
Wow.
and it's continued, and I still love it. I've gone on to become a registered nurse, and I got two master's degrees, a master's in business, master's in nursing. And through my experiences, I discovered or observed phenomena that defied conventional explanation, conventional wisdom, conventional scientific explanations. And I just collected those experiences and started to put them together. And there was a common theme that there was more going on than conventional wisdom explains. And as I learned more, I got exposed to quantum physics and the quantum physics double slit experiment, which suggests that mind over matter may be more significant than we are led to believe through quantum entanglement and the observer effect. And then I got exposed to more scientific studies that further supported that idea. And I started to suggest to my colleagues that I'm going to write a nursing theory that uses these principles to help us guide our patient care interactions to create better outcomes for our patients. I said that for about a decade as I was compiling information and compiling evidence and supportive sciences. And then about 3 years ago, I decided to actually write the book. And I completed and published it last year, last June.
Well,
And that's where I
congratulations.
am. And along the way, I wanted to fulfill and express desire by the healthcare industry to decentralize services. It's been something that the healthcare industry has been discussing for some time now that they want to take the care out of the hospital setting and bring it out into the community. And I decided I was going to fulfill that by starting Mobile Lab Techs, which is a clinical diagnostic services providing company where we provide phlebotomy and specimen collections, mobile radiology, and drug and alcohol testing and molecular DNA testing, which includes paternity and pandemic pathogen testing services. So we take our services out to the community where they're needed. we have two mottos for that organization, and that is for the patients that we serve, it's we're bringing the diagnostic services you need to the locations that you want. And for providers, we have don't send your patients to the lab, send the labs to your patients. And that's what we do.
I love that. I think that's a well-needed service that unfortunately wish it was global, but that's a great service to have. And I love how you were saying that you're mixing, the science with the nursing and teaching people how important it is about mind over matter and things like that, because I think that's a real thing for myself. I think we have this ability to heal our bodies, um, if we believe that we can heal our bodies. So
Yes,
can
yes.
you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's a convergence actually of ancient wisdoms and traditions that have spoken about these phenomena over the millennia. That millennia is more than one that has been discussed in different religious texts and spiritual lore. That there's another world that exists underneath the world that we know, and now advanced sciences are now demonstrating that in the research and studies that they're doing now, they're coming to that realization in some of the experiments that are being conducted that shows that there is more to the world than the mechanistic particle physics world explains. Several studies, starting with the first one that kind of suggested that for me was the quantum physics double slit experiment that speaks to observer effect and how the observer has an effect on how physical matter manifests in this experimentation. And then the other studies that also support that, the random numbers generator experiment, the chicks and the robot experiment, the Dr. Masaru Emoto's water studies, um, what else is there? And the confirming scientific study for me that finalized that, it was like the final pin for me, was a scientist by the name of Anton Zellinger, who conducted a study looking at light from quasar stars. And he was settling the debate that went on for almost a century between Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr. There was a 1927 Savoy meeting in Brussels, Belgium, where all the brilliant minds of the time got together to discuss the nature of our reality. What is the nature of our reality? Are we in the particle physics world as expressed by Albert Einstein, or are we living in a quantum world as expressed by Niels Bohr? The conclusion of Anton Zellinger's study demonstrates that we're in a quantum reality and we're in a participatory, energetic reality. And that for me was like the final pin for me to say, okay, if that's the case, then all these happenstance scenarios that nurses refer to. When you speak to nurses and you ask them of any, mysterious circumstance ever here happened in your career, they all have a story that they say, well, it was a minor miracle. There was this really weird coincidence. There was this happenstance that, and they'll all have a story to tell about something that defied conventional wisdom. So for me, I said, okay, maybe the quantum world reality is the underlying basis that makes those things possible, right? And instead of us having them happen incidentally, we should act in that knowledge and make them happen more purposefully in our practice to bring better outcomes for our patients.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree with that. So how can nurses and people in general help other people heal then based on this theory?
Okay, well, first it would take a ontological shift in perspective, where ontology is the study of a reality, a study of what is, correct? So we have to accept, okay, I have a principle that I put in my book. It's called the 4 A's progression. 4 A's is acknowledge, accept, adopt, and actualize. First, we have to acknowledge that this is our reality, right? Let's say, okay, from the evidence that you presented with, you say, okay, well, based on that evidence, that's our reality. Then you accept it. So okay, if that's our reality, then okay, so let's move forward with this understanding of this is the nature of our reality. And then you adopt it and you start to put it into practice. And then you continue that until you actualize it, where you embody it, and it becomes a natural part of the way you approach interacting with patients. And I believe that we're energetic beings in an energetic reality of a loving intelligence consciousness reality. So a universal consciousness. So if that's the case, then that is the way we should approach how we interact with patients to bring about the better care. Knowing that our thoughts, emotions, intentions have an effect and impact on our physical reality. And we should approach that for ourselves and try to instill that understanding into our patients. I often say to my patients, I'm a cardiac surgery ICU nurse by background. That's where I spent most of my career, emergency room and cardiac surgery intensive care. And interacting with my patients, I would always tell them, your recovery is not something that happens to you. Your recovery is something that you do. It's not a passive endeavor, it's an active endeavor. You have to be actively participating in your recovery in order for you to bring about the best possible recovery for yourself. So I instill that knowledge into my patients to help them take a more proactive and controlled role in their healthcare experience.
Then is that why some people heal faster and recover faster than other people is because they have a different way of thinking about it?
I believe that strongly. I know that for sure that when you're given a serious diagnosis or prognosis, when your doctor tells you a diagnosis and they tell you this is your reality, your response to it, emotionally, intellectually, your response to it has a greater determination of the actual outcome than the diagnosis itself. I know that for sure. I've seen it. I've seen it over and over again. And so I don't allow my patients to have defeatist attitudes with me when they start to get into despair. I strongly discourage it, even at the risk of them being angered with me. But I tell them you can't talk like that. You're working against me. You're working against everything that I'm working on when you say negative things like I'm going to die. This is not working. Those type of words. No, they're not allowed. I'm sorry, but you can't say that with me. Because that's where that energetically is working against all of my efforts.
Yeah, because you're
And
feeding into the negativity then and creating that reality is the way that I've
exactly,
always looked at it, right?
yes. Let me give you a for instance how that is. I have two sons, and I told them once when they were about 13, 14 years old, they have to go clean the garage. You have to go in the garage and you're going to separate the building materials from the tools and you're going to organize them. And one of my sons said, "Oh, Dad, that's so hard." I said, "Okay, son, I guess it is now." When I told it to you, it wasn't hard. It was just something that had to be done. You could have responded with, "Okay, Dad, I'll knock that out in about a half an hour or so." But you chose to say that it was hard. So that has become your reality. That is your reality now because that's the way the ideation that you chose for this experience. That's just one, for instance.
Yeah, and I agree with that because I often say, like, if I'm not feeling well, I will just, I don't play into it. I will just then say, I only have time to be well. And then I just think well thoughts. And then honestly, most of the time, I don't end up going down the other route because I haven't given power to that. And I'm a
Exactly.
true believer in, I think there's just so much that we can do for ourselves with the power of our mind that it's, if more people believe that, I think we'd be seeing a lot of different things.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I agree completely. That's a fact. And that's pretty much the premise of my book, is that understanding the energetic reality that we exist in and that our thoughts are just another form of energy, and energies align. And if the energy that you're putting out, that's what you're going to attract back. So if you stay in a positive state of mind, a loving state of mind, that's what we'll attract.
Mhm. Yeah. So have you in your career seen, you had alluded earlier that there's miraculous healings out there. So do you have any stories of any miraculous healings that you've witnessed?
A small miracle. I mean, there's so many that I can think of, but let me think of. There's one particular case that I can think of. There was a patient who we had in our unit that was had heart failure and needed a ventricular assist device, LVAD. It's a heart device that's implanted into your chest, and there's a wire that comes out of your chest that connects to a controller and a battery pack. And that's a very, very sensitive device because it's connected directly to your heart. And that wire that comes out of the chest is needs to be protected because if that gets infected, that leads directly back to your heart, and that could be very, very detrimental. And one of our patients developed a driveline infection and it wasn't doing very well. And the family was given the options of we can try to treat this infection, which is very unlikely that we'll be able to take care of completely because when the infection is on the materials of the wire, it's hard to get it out of that material because it's not tissue that has exposure to antibiotics that we circulate through the blood. So they offered that or remove it and replace it. But removing and replacing it was there was a high likeliness that the patient wouldn't survive that process because of the intricacy of the process of the procedure. So they're offered, fruitless cause or high risk of dying if we go that route. So it was a no-win scenario for them. And we got together and I spoke to them from my nursing perspective, and I said, I think we should just go with trying to heal this thing with antibiotics and trying to treat it instead of trying to remove it and replace it because the likeliness of him not surviving is very, very high. And we got together and we prayed, and I made him my patient. And I would take him every day I would go to work, and it was me and someone else every day that I went to work. It was 12-hour shift, so it was every night I would leave the nurse that's taking over for me and tell him this is what we're going to do, and this is what you don't do, and this is how we're going to help him move forward. And I would come, that's what I expect to see when I come back in the morning. And my position is when I go to work, the determinant of whether I'm having a good day or not is if I was able to advance my patient's condition where I've left him better off than I found him at the beginning of my shift. If I'm able to successfully wean him off of a medication or improve their overall hemodynamics or improve their overall condition, that's a good day. And we just worked that scenario for some time. And it was touch and go for a while. There was one day I had a Reiki nurse come in to see this patient. You know what Reiki is?
Yeah. I
Okay.
do
All right.
Reiki myself, so
Okay. So now she came in to see the patient, and as she was leaving the room, she says to me, "Oh, he's going to be gone in 3 days." I said, "Oh, really? Don't come back to this room," because that kind of ideation is working against everything that I'm working on, and I don't need that energy around this patient at this time. Now, given the patient was very, very sick at that time, and he was probably on the edge and deciding whether he wanted to be in this world or the next world. He was in that state where he was probably spiritually, energetically contemplating where he wants to be. But I was intent on saving him and restoring him. So I told her, please don't come back because I don't need that. That's working against me. So we continued to work with this gentleman. And over about 2 months or so, we recovered him, sent him home to his family, where he lived for another 10 years.
that's
You know,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think that that just goes to prove, the point of what the energy is in that room by the people that are surrounding that is important, as well as your own thoughts and feelings with healing. Do you think there's anything that can't potentially be healed through the power of the mind?
Anything that can't, I don't know the limits of what can happen. I don't know the limits. I don't accept limits. You know, I don't want to propose that there's complete and total control, because there's so many variables involved. There's the patient's will, the family's will, the conditions, and there's so many variables that involve. So it's hard to say that pure thought alone can do it.
Hmm.
Pure thought within the patient and the caregiver is enough. But I don't think we should put limits either. We should not say it's impossible.
Yeah.
And because I've seen, anecdotal evidence of some really, really far out, cases that, really say, okay, then there's more here going on than what we can explain. So, there are no limits to what the mind can do. There are no
Yeah.
limits. What a trained mind can do is really incredible. Have you heard of Wim Hof, the Iceman?
Hmm. I have.
Here's one example of some far out, mind over matter will experiences creating some miraculous outcomes. His ability to withstand extreme cold, extreme heat, healing himself when exposed to bacterial toxins and so forth. So, how far and how much a well-trained mind can do has not been explored yet. It's still, not fully explained and not fully how you say limited by any explanations up to this point.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I definitely agree with you there, because I think we're just wrapping our heads around, all of this. And then you also mentioned prayer. So do you think that that is a part of this as well? Is that we need some kind of spiritual divine connection to something bigger than ourselves?
Well, we're all part of the thing bigger than ourselves, right? We're energetic beings and an energetic reality, and the underlying loving, intelligent, universal consciousness is we're all part of it. We're all part of it. So we're already part of that divine connection. We are that divine connection. So yes, prayer is just one way of making that connection. Prayer and intentional thoughts and emotional control and management are all part of that equation. So that's uh, ancient wisdoms, and that's the theme of the book, where science meets spirit. The spirit part is the spiritual aspect that ancient traditions have been speaking about across millennia, right?
Hmm.
They've been saying this for thousands of years, and now the science is catching up to it. Now the science is discovering what has been said for thousands of years. So they're not, I come from the world where I don't believe that spirituality and science are diametrically opposed. They're the same thing using a different language to express itself.
Yeah.
And now we're coming to see that, yeah, the what we're now calling scientific exploration is uncovering what has been taught before for thousands of years.
Hmm.
So they're not opposed. They're the same. They're the same thing coming from different approaches to explain phenomena, where
Yeah.
science is using just a different language.
Yeah, that's very true. So, do you think that it seems like to me, anyways, just from different things I'm watching, is there's a lot more of this, the mind over the matter, and a lot more, um, you know, herbal remedies and things like that. And I believe that there's a place for medicine, and I believe there's a place for herbal remedies myself. So, do you think that that is some of it, of why this is being brought back into our lives now from the past?
Well, yes, yes. A lot of this, a lot of the treatments that exist now were in place. There were herbal medicines, there were herbal remedies, there were things that people use from their environment, from the garden to create results. And we're now discovering that the chemical properties. Well, let's start with understanding that a lot of what we call medicine today is actually derived from a plant substance and been synthesized into a pill or a shot or something else, but the chemical compounds are similar to something that was found in nature somewhere, you know, and then now they just synthesize it into, petrochemical compound that we can mass produce and deliver to people. But it actually started out, a lot of the medicine started out from a plant source
Mhm.
and chemically reproduce it, so
Yeah.
that,
And do you think that too, people need to realize that we need to live a little more healthier than we have been living? Like, I find that like I've done some studies on the blue zones and things like that, where,
mhm.
it talks about community and it talks about, laughter and all these different
Social
things about eating,
interaction,
yeah,
and
eating
yes,
healthy and,
yes, living
and
healthy. You know, in our modern mechanistic world, we're living in a world that is, in a lot of ways, counter to life. You know, it's detrimental to life and the living processes. We are ingesting things in our food, air, and water that are destructive to our biological bodies. You know, and in the blue zones that you refer to, there's places where people are living 100, 125 years, like the Hunza tribe in Afghanistan, where when they were first discovered, they were living to 160 years old. There was a man recently interviewed that was at 125 years and had a 13-year-old child. So there are things, there are places where life is more abundant because of many factors, including environmental conditions, the exposures that they have, more natural living where we're living closer to nature and natural, living, less chemicals, less, how you say it, synthetic chemicals exposures, and then they attribute a lot of that longevity to social interaction and having a purposeful life, where you continue to engage with others and maintaining a body in a condition that you are able to continue to move and continue to be active with people, that will extend your life to a large degree. So there's a lot of things in our physical world that, can contribute to longevity, like activities and lifestyle choices and such. But pure spiritual positioning also contributes to that as well, I believe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think too that, the more that we can wrap our heads around this, that these things are easily obtainable to move our bodies and, feed our minds and get community and all of these things, and to not be harboring negative thoughts. I think the more that we can do that, the more as a society we would find that we're actually going to have less disease, right?
Yes, right? Yes. Now, you heard of Dr. Masuda Emoto and his water
Have,
studies?
yes.
You have. So, in his experiments, he demonstrated how intention placed into water can affect the molecular structure of the water when it freezes, right? So, taking that a step further and understanding that we are a majority water, our body is 80 plus percent water, molecularly maybe 90%. The intentions we put into our body, the thoughts that we hold, the words that we use as we refer to ourselves can impact that water, right? So if that's the case, the negative ideation, the focus on and negativity will impact our overall physiology through that mechanism, through that, the way that our intentions impact the water that is us, so that is a very significant thing to be considered.
Yeah. And I think too, it's not just our words, it's what we're thinking inside of our minds too, because a lot of
Mhm.
times I feel like we don't say it right out loud, but we're, thinking these negative thoughts about ourselves and yeah, it's like, okay, well, your body's listening, so don't do that
Yes.
anymore.
Choose your thoughts wisely. I tell
Yes.
that to my patients all the time. I'm also a clinical instructor for one of the universities in northern New Jersey here. And my class is Transition to Professional Practice, where I take senior nursing students and I expose them to clinical settings for the first time. And I know that the healthcare in general is steeped in fear. Fear is an underlying orientation to how we approach what we do and how we approach patient interactions. It starts early in nursing careers where nursing students are told you're working hard to get this nursing license. Don't do anything to make you lose your license. Be afraid of doing the wrong thing. Be afraid of patient interaction. Be afraid of making a mistake. Be afraid, be afraid, afraid. And, that's an indoctrination into a fear-based approach to how you work. And I know that a doctor in a podcast I recently watched was talking about how in his third year of medicine, third year of med school, he was told that do not connect with your patients too much because that could lead to burnout if outcomes are not what you desire. And then he went into, so that's another fear-based instruction given to caregivers,
Mhm.
and that instruction to not connect is counter to what the research is showing. The research shows that making connection, having compassion is the antidote to burnout. So, that whole fear-based approach is an indoctrination into the healthcare industry. So when I get my students for the first time and then I meet them first, one of the first things I teach them, I say, I know that you've been indoctrinated in this fear-based approach to care, but we're not going to practice that in Mr. Meikle's class. We're going to practice a love-based approach to nursing here. We're going to be love-based nursing in this class where we're going to not entertain any fear ideations and we're going to focus on a love-based approach where we're going to bring our expertise, our skills, our knowledge, and we're going to use that to drive how we interact with our patients. And I want you to focus on making a spiritual and energetic connection with your patient. Get into their heads, make that connection so that they know that you care, and then we move forward from there.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's beautiful because just recently my mom had to do some tests and the nurses there were amazing, amazing, amazing human beings because they were very much about the connection. They were very much about, explaining things and just, can I get you a warmer blanket? All these different things. And in the end, I was just like, thank you so much for being so kind and the amazing job that you're doing because they were definitely coming from a love-based approach as a peer, as opposed to, I don't have time for you or, you know, any kind of fear like that. So what you're saying holds so true because it just made the experience a lot easier.
Yes, I have a saying, I forget where I heard it, but I use it all the time. No one cares what you know until they know that you care.
Mhm.
And that speaks to, you could be the most experienced and knowledgeable nurse, but if you don't come with that I care for you perspective, it's not going to be well received. Your expertise is not going to be welcomed if you're not demonstrated that you care
Yeah.
first.
Very true, because usually when we're in the situation where we're seeking care, we are worried about something or we have some fear inside of ourselves. So
Absolutely.
if we can be met in that instance with somebody with knowledge, but also with love, we're going to really have a different thought of how we want our outcome to even come. And we're going to be open to a lot more suggestions from that person as well.
Yes. Yes. You're going to be more receptive to the care.
Yeah.
You're going to be like welcoming it more instead of being, oh no, here she comes again. So yes, when you bring that loving perspective and approach, is going to be more received. And when you make that connection now, you're able to guide the
Mhm.
patients a little bit better to a better perspective, a more greater expectation for a positive outcome because they have faith in you, they believe in you, they trust in you. They know that your guidance is based in a true desire for helping and having a good outcome.
Yeah. And I feel like that's something then we can spread into our everyday lives outside of that. Like this is a universal thing that we can just do as opposed to just doing it when we're, needing care. But I think it's amazing this that you're teaching people because it's needed right now. Well, it's been needed for a long time. So I think that this is really important. If there was something that you could drive home to people to listen to about this, what would that be?
It would be follow the 4 A's. Acknowledge that we're in an energetic reality. We're energetic beings in a universal, loving, intelligent universe that is consciousness, universal consciousness is loving, that we have the ability to impact people with our energy. We have the ability to create better outcomes by creating an environment, where the positivity can flow. Our thoughts, words, intentions matter. Use them wisely.
Hmm.
We approach everything from a loving perspective. I teach my students, you never have to fear doing what you do if you are putting the patient's interest first. If you put the patient's interest before everything else, you have nothing to fear. Because even if an adverse event occurs, if you can demonstrate that you were acting in that patient's best interest in your actions, you're well supported. If you're acting in a self-protective manner and something adverse happens, then it could be attributed to you and something that you did or didn't do, or the way you acted or responded. But if you can demonstrate, yes, my intentions were the patient's best interests in all of what I was doing, you're protected, so you have nothing to fear. So you can leave fear out of the equation altogether if you take that loving approach.
Hmm.
So I tell my students also, no matter what you do, the most loving response will always be the best response. Yes, my book is written primarily for it's written for healthcare providers in general, but specifically to nurses. It's to help nurses guide them to their best approach to direct patient care interactions. But, however, I am writing a second book, which is the same theories written to the public instead of to the providers, to the recipients of care, and how to guide them to be better patients and to interact with the healthcare institutions to create better outcomes for themselves by having more agency. Um, a lot of times when patients interact with healthcare, they are they lose agency, they lose command, they are at the will or at the mercy of the healthcare system itself. And that's not the best approach. You should remain in control and remember this is your experience that you should be trying to manage to the best of your ability. So I'm writing the second book to the public from the same perspective of a love-based approach, understanding their energetic reality and how their thoughts, words, and intentions affect their own outcomes as well. And I started another organization that's going to launch at the end of June called Loving Care Partners, which is a healthcare consumer advocacy company that helps advocate for patients through information and education, helps them to understand the system from an insider perspective, where we talk to them about the hospital interaction experience from registration to post-discharge interactions what to expect, what questions to ask, how to interact with the caregivers, what certain procedures look like, what's their role in the procedure, what to expect from the caregivers, how to participate more effectively, to be have more agency in within those interactions so that they can help create a better outcomes for themselves.
I think that's amazing. And well needed. Like, so that's
Thank you.
thank you for creating something like that because that is absolutely amazing. And, I think the more that we can teach people that, we do need to be advocates for our own health. And so, and going into these situations, we need the healthcare workers to come with a love, but we also need to come with that loving energy as well, so we can meet in the middle, that we can have the best experience for everybody that's involved.
Yes. Information, knowledge, and understanding is a good response to reduce fear and anxiety. The more you know, the less you have to fear. A lot of unknowns and uncertainties creates anxiety and fear. So being equipped with knowledge and understanding will minimize the fear-based response. So that's what we give to the clients, patients in the healthcare consumer advocacy platform. Strength through knowledge and understanding.
And that's wonderful, because I think, too, is a lot of people nowadays with the internet and so much information out there, and not all correct,
Mhm.
also the same thing, right? People are trying to get this information without discernment sometimes, and so then that creates that fear too. So I think, reaching out and having people like such as yourself that can guide people to where the correct information is for them is amazing. So
It is. I in talking to my staff and my students and people I work with, I pose a question to them just to check their positioning sometimes. I'm like, who do you work for? And they say, well, at this hospital, blah, 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 this institution. I said, no, no, you work for your patients. You're employed by the hospital and they pay you, but you come to work for your patients. Everything you do is for the patients. The hospital be damned, the doctor be damned. You're here for your patients. No, never lose focus of that. That's the center of your purpose here is to work for your patient's best outcome. And I've always taken that approach, and that's what I bring to the Loving Care Partners platform. That I'm talking to you in a manner that I would tell my sister or brother who's going into interaction with the healthcare system. I'm giving you a perspective from an insider, from someone who's been inside the belly of the beast for 40 years. This is what to expect. This is what you should do. These are the questions you should ask. This is what you will be facing, and this is your best response type of approach from an insider perspective.
I love it. I think that's amazing. Can you tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your book?
Okay, well, you can find my book at my author's website at loving the poweroflovetheory.com. Poweroflovetheory.com, no spaces. And that's where you'll be able to find the book, and then you'll find more about me, and you'll be finding all the rest of the projects that I'll be bringing to the table at that platform as well.
Wonderful. I think that's amazing, and you're doing amazing work. So I need to give a big shout out to you for that, because, we need more people like you that are, bringing these ideas forward to help people just live a better life. So really
Yes,
appreciate you for
that's
that.
I appreciate that as well. It's just been my life's work. I've started at 16. I'm 61, and I've been in this field. I tell people I tell people that I have an infinitely renewable source of love that I can give away in abundance and never run out. So I will continue to do that. Right. And
Yeah.
also that uh how would I say how would I say this? I've grown addicted to seeing my efforts result in other people's lives being better. As an open heart recovery nurse, taking a person out of the operating room, directly out of the operating room with multiple tubes coming out of their body, on the edge of life, and restoring them to a state of wellness where I can see them leave my unit in a better state than we found them, is a hell of a feeling. It's a it's I've gotten so used to that. I don't know how to get it anywhere else. And I love it and I want more of it all the time. I want to see my efforts result in people being well or better. And when people meet me for the first time and ask me what I do, I said, I save lives and make people better. That's
I
that's
love
what
that. That
that's what I do. And I love that. I love being able to say that, you know.
that's an amazing thing to be able to say and to be able to take that energy with you. If you had a final thought to leave with our followers and us, what would it be?
Lead with love. Lead with love. Love is the underlying basis of our reality. And the most loving response will always be the best response, no matter what you're encountering.
I love it. Well, thank you, Winston. It's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today and so
Thank
much
you.
knowledge. And I hope people really do take away, leading with love and, coming into things with love instead of fear. I really do hope they hear that and take that away from all of the things that you said today. So thank you again for being on the
Thank
podcast.
you. Thank you so much, Kim. It's been my pleasure and honor to be with you today. Thank
And
you.
you're welcome. And everybody else, we will see you on the next one.